shape number 2. We're going to take that cylinder and we're going to open the top of it into a V, so the top of it's going to be wider than the bottom. So it's flared out at the top in a V shape or a flare shape.
I'm swinging it out so I can elongate the piece a little bit. I'm going to get it hot enough to put a jack line in at this point.
Now, placement on the jack line is pretty important. You want to make sure that jack line is right off the end of the pipe. You don't want it up on the pipe. If it's on the pipe, you won't get a successful break. So you can put it down lower, but not any higher than the end of the pipe.
If you put it down lower, though, you give too much option for it to break off unevenly.
Yep. Okay, so
here goes my jack line. And first you're going to touch it with that first blade and try to keep it on center and line.
You don't want to squeeze and touch both sides, both the times, the jack, until after you've made that first circle all the way around. That indentation on the jack line has to come all the way around first.
Right.
And here you're just using the jacks to put in a flat on the bottom and then a small indentation that's going to center everything up. A kick done right, it'll give you a little indentation dead center on the bottom of your piece. It should be lined up through the center line of the pipe if you've kept everything on center.
Right.
It's one of those simple concepts that's a little easier to articulate than it is to actually do. So is it different center or gathering for your punny? Do you do anything different?
The one I gather on my pipe?
Mm-hmm.
I gather smaller and not as much by far. Try to keep it small because you don't want to get a whole bunch of glass on there because you'll retain too much heat. And when you go to knock your piece off of your pipe, it will wiggle a lot. It could cause you to drop the piece.
So why do you touch it up on the side like that?
To give it a cool spot so it's not so hot when it goes on and glues to the piece. You still want a little bit of...
Right there you can see, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to limit the amount of contact you're going to have with the other piece. Okay, so you bring it to a point, and you can see that some of the glass is off the end of the punny. The wider that is, and the hotter it is, and the more solidly it welds, the more likely you are to bring the bottom out of the piece when you pull it off. So you want that pontile to be soft enough to absorb the shock when you tap the pipe, hard enough and well enough seated that it won't drop the piece, that it'll stay attached and allow you to move it and reheat it and spin it, and yet delicate enough in its adhesion that when you tap the pipe it shatters right there where the pontile met the bottom of the glass. Ideally you end up with very little mark or anything. In reality, if your punny is too hot when it goes in, you're going to take a chunk out of the bottom of the piece when you knock the punny off. If your punny's too long off the end of the pontile, the glass off the end of the pontile, then what happens oftentimes is you leave part of that glass on the piece, and then you have to either go back and chip it off or grind it or whatever. So it's kind of a delicate process. And the other thing is, when you're doing a small piece, especially a clear one or one that opens up more, you tend to heat that up. When you're heating up the piece, you heat up that connection and make it weld too tight. Again, making it easy to pull the bottoms out. So a lot of times when people get to the 6th and 7th shapes, the rondelles and the fluted pieces, they tend to pull the bottoms out because they're working them longer and they're getting that too hot. That was a perfect tap off. It took one little tap and it came right off. That's the way it should work. Next, we're going to make a bowl. A cylinder once again, but this time we want the sides to be shorter than the width. Ideally, about 2.5 times as wide as it is tall. Here we are with the jack line and the kick already in.
Now it's time to punny up.
Yeah. You want to explain how you get that punny to center?
While it's still hot enough, you put your cold chisel onto the ponteel and you kind of help level it that way because you still have enough heat that it's malleable. You're able to move it around. It'll help get it on center that way.
Now it's important on the jacks that you keep them level if you want the cylinder sides to be straight. Sounds simple, but lots of people forget that.
It's easy to tilt your wrist just enough to create a V.
Mm-hmm.
So you always want to stay center with the bottom of your piece and not so much the top.
Here, the punny looks big to me.
It is. It's a little big. It's going to retain a little too much heat.
A little too thick. Now, when that happens, you end up with more adhesion to the bottom of the piece, and it doesn't want to let go where you want it to let go.
Right. Sometimes you can get it to come off by putting just a dot of water right at the tip of the ponteel or the punny where it meets the bottom of your piece.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can get it to break off that way. Sometimes it breaks out the bottom. Eventually it may or may not work out.
Well, that's going to chill it a little bit. There we go. You got lucky. That came off pretty clean.
I did. I got lucky.